Would Paparoni have made a great villain, and what qualities would he have had to make a great or a bad villain itself? And joining me today is both Tragic and Geekdom, as we're going to have a roundtable discussion on all of this. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So Tragic, you were one of the first people who I was talking about to inspire this conversation, so why do you think Paparoni would have made a good or a great villain, or even a bad villain?
Actually, I was kind of stating off the recording here. I think he would just make a good villain because we haven't seen a doctor to his potential in a while, and it seems like he has a lot of, you know, all previous doctors that we have seen before, you know, especially with the androids involved and whatnot. And but there's something a little different about Paparoni because we don't really know what his race is, and it seems like the race card, and I don't try to put this in here, but it seems like the race card is actually being more significant now more than ever. You know, because the way he was manifesting almost had like that garlic, you know, type of growth and stuff like that, you know, especially when he fused, he had that weird demonic type of thing. So it would be interesting to know, first of all, what type of individual he is, and then second, you know, we did kind of find out that this guy was willing to give his life. Like, he, you know, unlike other doctors, it seems like this guy was actually more willing to give his life for the cause. So it'll be pretty interesting finding out what he can actually do. You know, was he advanced on a cellular level, you know, than previous doctors that we've seen? You know, those are the questions I want to know.
I feel like with the way that Dr. Paparoni and the Universe 3 robots were given to us or promoted in the series, I feel like it would be more fitting for him to be a movie villain. I mean, people have already made comparisons to Hachiak. But just the way that they fought, the way they fused, and then at the end they all had to team up, it just really felt like a Dragon Ball Z movie versus a TV show. So if you are going to make him a television or a manga villain, you would have to flesh out his backstory. You would have to create a story that is actually a story. You know, one of the things about the Toei Dragon Ball Z movies is that they all sort of follow the same formula, where you have, you know, a threat coming to Earth or appearing on the Earth. You have something happen to where Goku can't really defeat them. They overmatch Goku. The other Z fighters come in there. Vegeta comes in. Piccolo would save Gohan sometimes. You know, things that you would see in all these movies. And then at the end of the day, you had what Gabby calls Goku Ex Machina, where he'd pull something out of nowhere and get the W to save everyone. You know, one of the problems with Dragon Ball Super is that we haven't had an arc yet that really had a strong narrative. You know, the closest that we got was the Future Trunks arc, where you actually had like a story. It wasn't the best story, but we haven't really had something like, for example, the Frieza saga or the Cell saga, where you have like a story that has different twists and turns and kind of, you know, goes sort of like, it sort of plays with your emotions a little bit. You know, for example, to kind of elaborate on my point, if you go back and watch the Cell saga, you know, they start out with obviously Frieza and then Trunks. He tells them the threat, and then the threat appears 3 years later. Then they end up, Goku has his heart virus problem. They lose to the android. So right there, the Z fighters losing was supposed to be a shocking moment. And those of you who were around back then when it first aired, in whatever country you're in, it sort of was a shocking moment. They lost. But then you're thinking, okay, how can things get worse? And then they introduce Cell. So you would have to, and then, you know, Cell absorb people. It has to be like a story, you know, a beginning, middle, and end. So to answer your question, this long-winded answer, potentially he looks like he could be a great villain, but personally, from what we've seen, I think that movie time works better.
If you look at Dr. Paparoni, I think he could be a fully fleshed out villain in an entire anime story as opposed to a movie, and I actually disagree with you for one reason only. Because of the fact that he has so many different robots up his sleeve at the same time, as opposed to Dr. Gero or Dr. Gero, who had released them at, you know, different increments within the Dragon Ball story. And I think that because of having so many robots, if you were to slow down the pacing, you could, I guess you could say, increase the pacing of the show by just going up and fighting one more powerful robot to the next one. He also has a lot of those gag-like robots too that would have been great for fighting against the weaker characters outside of Goku and friends. So I think he has the support system to have been a main villain, and what I enjoy the most about him is that unlike a lot of the other characters in the Tournament of Power where you just gotta feel like they're just another fighter, I got the feeling that both Annie Raza and Paparoni had more of a devious villain side to them, you know what I mean? Like, I felt when Annie Raza was summoned, like, it's like, uh-oh, like, this is a villain, this isn't just a fighter in the Tournament of Power.
If you look at their fight versus Annie Raza versus, like, the Goku versus, like, Jiren, or the Hit versus Jiren, those 5 guys versus, you know, Annie Raza was, to me, more better. Like, it was more impactful. Like, whoa, like, this is some like, this guy's a real problem. Like, he's a real problem. And then this is another thing that's kind of threw me for a loop. 17 has probably the best field, you know, field shield or whatever you want to call that, in the game. And, you know, in the manga, we know that Sidra is considered the best at it, like he states it. But Android 17 is a beast. He goes through like literally a destructing ball, like something that can literally destroy universes. You know what I mean? Like, on that type of level, he went through this thing. So, you know, it makes you think like this guy was still a problem, because even when he broke his reactor, he was still pushing them back. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of scary. That's a scary character to me.
Well, I wanted to play devil's advocate on one thing that you said earlier about, you know, comparing it to the Android Saga. See, the thing is, here's the tricky part about this discussion. If you're looking for a story about a scientist who has these super powerful robots, that was already told in the Android arc pretty much, and they're not going to top on Cell. And then if you're looking for a story where Goku and the gang has to beat a number of different villains, or like a video game, like a Mega Man game, where you have to beat the different robot masters till you get to the end, that's already been done with the Red Ribbon arc. So you're kind of retelling and rehashing the same story details, or the same story elements that have already been done in Dragon Ball before. And I feel like no matter what they do, it's going to come off to some people as a rehash, because it's a scientist and we've seen it already.
Right, and if I were to add my 2 cents to that, Geekdom, I think we have to draw the fine line between Annie Raza and Paparoni, because in my opinion, I think if you take a more cerebral villain like Paparoni and make him the focus of an arc, you have much more, I guess you could say, room to write a good story, as opposed to Annie Raza. Because the thing is, you know, obviously with mindless monsters, there's only so much you can do with them, as opposed to a villain that can actually think, or a villain that can actually adapt to his environments on a much more cerebral villain. And even though Annie Raza was able to grow wings and adjust during the fight, it's just not the same way as fighting a character like Cell or Frieza or even Super Buu, who's more intelligent in fighting, you know what I mean?
I mean, it's just tough because writing new Dragon Ball stories becomes a challenge. The only way to really make it interesting, and I've been saying this now for well over a year, is to really take the story, you know, move away from Goku a little bit and do something a little bit different, because it is pretty much the same thing. I mean, there are new things in Super. I'm just saying that if you were to tell a story like that, it's sort of going to be too much like the previous stuff. And that's okay sometimes. You can have little similarities here and there about how you want to do things. I mean, that's fine. It's just that particular storyline, I think, would rub people the wrong way, you know. But if it's cool, bro. It's Dragon Ball. It doesn't really matter.
You know, what would be pretty interesting, like, you know, Geekdom was saying, was the fact that, yes, they kind of have told many stories already before. I think the only likely story, and this is actually kind of going in the fan service, right? Because it's the only way you can, like, would make that story make sense, is the fact that Mira and Toa, they have like this thing where she's the scientist, you know, she is a scientist. So it would play an interesting role to see maybe if he is also in that realm, you know what I mean, like in that realm. Because one thing we didn't know in the drag, you know, like in this Tournament of Power, is we do know that they do acquire people from many different areas. Would it have been interesting if he is that, you know, he's from that realm in Universe, you know, 3, you know, like if he's from a different realm in Universe 3, then that's how they acquired him. That's what's so special about him, you know. That would actually make sense, like why, you know, Annie Raza was so powerful, you know.
ultimately, guys, I think that's been all of our takes on how we want to actually discuss what if Dr. Paparoni was a villain. I'd like to, you know, thank Geekdom and Tragic for coming on this video today. This was a long conversation. We got a lot of points for you guys that we also want to see you guys responding with your thoughts in the comment section below. What if Dr. Paparoni was a villain? Do you think he would make a good villain, and more? So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys. And don't forget to check out Geekdom and Tragic in my description.